Amos chapter 9, verse 1. I saw Yahweh standing by the slaughter place, and he said, strike the column head so that the thresholds shake, and break them off by the head, all of them. And the last of them I kill with the sword. Not one of them fleeing gets away, and not one fugitive of them escapes. Very straightforward. Nobody will be saved, obviously, is referring to those of the world, not of those who are in Mashiach. Yahweh doesn't change. He doesn't contradict himself. He's talking about those who are wicked, those who will have to pay in the end times. And it's also continuing what we just read in the previous chapter, right? It was pretty much, the previous chapter was kind of introducing this slaughtering that is about to happen, which will mainly happen during the last 3.5 years after the death of the two witnesses, which is interesting because remember what Yahweh says to the last, he who overcomes, in Revelation 3. He's talking to Philadelphia, the congregation of the chosen few, says to the messenger of the assembly of Philadelphia, right? He who set apart, he who is true. So check this out, set apart, important, true. And this that I'm mentioning is because it connects in one way or another to the verse we are reading on Amos. He is set apart, he is true. He opens, no one shuts, he shuts and no one opens, right? Then he says, I have set before you an open door. And look, all of that, see how right here is talking about thresholds. So that the thresholds shake and break them off by the head, all of them. After the column head is struck, right? And in a way, right, like columns that make a threshold through which people go into a place like a gate. And like, for instance, the columns or pillars at the temple, Yakin and Boaz. Yahushua is Yakin, the last is Boaz. Remember that the pillars in the temple or columns had a head. So that's why I saw the connection here, because they had something on top. So it's like Yahweh saying, make them shake, strike the column on the head so that it shakes and makes the threshold, shake. So I find interesting that he mentions just column, not in plural. Let me see in Hebrew, he was standing over the slaughtering place or the slaughter place. And he said, a pillar head. Hakaftor. Interesting. Now, well, let me say the first thing I was going to say, and then I'll show you the word why I've said interesting. So I know your works. See, I have said before you an open door. So it was talking about thresholds in a way, like make the threshold shake, like those who are wanting to go in, they won't be able, or the column will go down after they strike the head. The first is Yakin, the last is Boaz. When they kill the last, then when they kill the last, the mercy gate will be shut. So the threshold will shake in the sense that people won't be able to enter anymore, for everything will come down on them, as we just saw. I said before you an open door, no one is able to shut it, that you have little power, yet have guarded my word, Yahushua, and have not denied my name, Yahweh. See, I am giving up those of the congregation of Satan who say they are Yehudim and are not but lie. See, I am making them come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you, because you have guarded my word, Yahushua, of endurance. Also I shall guard you from the hour of trial which shall come upon all the world, to try those who dwell on the earth. See, I am coming speedily. This is important. I mentioned it in the previous chapter, I believe, previous study. I am coming speedily. Remember, and well, Celius hopefully still there. Remember, Boaz, I just mentioned it, is the other pillar. Boaz means speedily or with strength, depending on how you see the word. As one word, speedily. But if we separate it although you don't have to separate it, because in Hebrew, what I'm about to mention would be together, but in English would be two words, with strength. So Boaz can be interpreted as with strength, but it is directly translated as speedily. So I am coming speedily can be said as I am coming as Boaz. Hold what you have, that no one take your crown. He who overcomes, I shall make him a supporting post, a pillar, a column. Which one? Boaz. I come speedily. I am coming as Boaz. That's why he's becoming a supporting post in the dwelling place of my Elohim. A pillar or a column. Now, here, let me go to the concordance again. Amos chapter 9. Smite the lintel of the door, that the post may shake. So we have kaftor, bold nub, capital of a pillar. So the head of the pillar, the part that goes on top. And like I said, the pillars, the two pillars at the entrance of the temple had a capital on the top, or a head. And that is the kaftor. Now, I find this word interesting because it is also made up of two words, kaf and tor. Kaftor, the whole head, right, of the pillar. It says probably from an unused root meaning to encircle. Now, kaf means the palm of the hand. The last comes as the hand, comes as a kaf, because he is the hand that speaks. Remember that the letter pei is a mouth. Just like one speaks with the hands when you use it, right, to express. So kaf, tor, is a turtle dove, dove, which represents the Ruach HaKodesh. Remember what I have mentioned, and once again, Joseph comes into play, about a book called Hator, which is a Jewish book that has a lot of connections or information showing how the last of the, even though they don't call him the last is a descendant of Joseph. So Kol Hator, which is the voice of the, you know, how they put it here. There you go. Last. Remember that the translator here, they translate in the Hebrew that they speak nowadays, which is not the Hebrew of the scripture. So that's why sometimes this happens. So the voice of the turtle dove, that refers to the Ruach HaKodesh. Remember how the Ruach came down as a dove on Mashiach. So Kol is the voice. Yahushua is the word, the last is the voice, and the Ruach is the Torah. Not only that, and we were seeing the word kaftor, so in that case, let me write the kaf. It will be like this, but this pei, since I'm separating the words, would be written this way. Kaf is also translated as spoon, because a spoon is like a calf. I mean, like a palm of the hand, right? Or you can make a spoon with the palm of the hand. It's a little hole right there. So even that has its implications, because the hardest service that the Kohen Hagadol had to perform, was that of the incense. And for that, they needed a calf, they needed a spoon. And he had to take it with the mouth and have the incense and other things in his hands. And he had to approach the most set apart place, at which was, well, at his entrance was the altar for the incense. And the incense goes up to the smoke from the fire. Just like the two witnesses will be killed with fire from heaven, so that they will go up as they resurrect. But as I was saying, the last comes as a hen that speaks, as a calf. The calf also represents the throne and a crown. And Tor is the total dough. So the hand of the Ruach. And like I was saying, Kol HaTor makes reference to the descendant of Joseph, through whom Yahweh will speak. And if we see it letter by letter, the hand will speak as the last, or by mistake, the hand, which is the calf, will speak, which is the mouth, the pay, about the cross, which is the taf. Remember the cross in pictographic. About the cross, meaning he will testify of the death of Mashiach, who was nailed as the head of the congregation. The hand will speak as the last in the end times of the cross to which the Son of Man was nailed to become the head. So let's go back to Amos 9. I saw Yahweh standing by the slaughter place, and he said, strike the column head, kaftor, so that the thresholds shake, and break them off by the head. So once they strike the last, who is the column head or the column itself, then the gate of mercy will be shut, the thresholds will shake, and everybody will start to die, one by one, one after the other, in many different ways, through 7 different plagues. Break them off by the head, all of them. And the last of them I will kill with the sword. Look at that. And the last of them, the wicked, I will kill with the sword. When? In the word of Harmegiddo, which is the end of the last 7 years. And with the sword of his mouth. As he said, I am coming to fight with them with the sword of my mouth. And the last of them I will kill with the sword. Not one of them fleeing gets away. Now, he's not referring to the Exodus, he's referring to those who will try to flee from that war. Those who will try to flee when they realize they are losing against the Messiah. And not one fugitive of them escapes. Every one of them will die and become food for the birds of the sky. If they dig into Sheol, this is important. Because where do the dead go? According to scriptures, they go to Sheol. And where is Sheol? Under the earth. For to go to it, one must dig. Right? But people believe that when they die, they go up. But it says here, dig, so they go down. If they dig into Sheol, which also means that in a way you could do it, and it is possible in the sense that, well, it is another reality, but in the same space that we occupy. But also, since it is being mentioned here in a literal sense, it is possible that the veil between both realities is very thin. And perhaps some or all could experience or see or hear what is going on there if we were to actually dig. And I say that because there is a story that maybe all of you know already about a dig that they did years ago, decades ago, and they recorded, and they called it the sounds of hell, because you could hear people screaming, which seemed of pain. And even you could, it seems like you could hear also demons torturing people in the background. You could see a lot, hear a lot of people screaming. And that is a sound that they got from the deepest hole that they have dug in the past. So that is a very interesting recording, if it is real, as they say. So if they dig into Sheol, from there my hand does take them. Doesn't matter if they're able to actually enter a different reality, Yahweh will take them. They won't be able to escape because remember he was talking about fugitives. Nobody will be able to escape even if they die. Right? Because the only way that you can actually go to Sheol is if you die. But the death in this reality is an illusion. The true death will be in the judgment after a millennium. So we can see this as a couple of things. Either Yahweh saying, even if you try to escape from my hand, and you are able to change realities, for instance, through CERN, if they are able, the scientists are able to make a door to another reality through CERN, and they are able to go through it, even so, they won't be able to escape. Yahweh will take them from there. And remember that they are trying to open the gate for Abaddon to come out. And where is the Abaddon? It is in Sheol. So they are trying to open the gate of Sheol. Now, another way to put it is that when they die, they will go to Sheol. But death won't help them escape, because from there, my hand does take them. Because after they go to Sheol, they will be taken to judgment and then to the lake of fire. So they won't remain in Sheol even if they die. But like I said, even if they are able to open a door to another reality, from there, my hand does take them. And like I said, Yahushua is the arm, the last is the hand. So that's why my hand does take them, because Yahweh will use the hand to punish. And if they climb up to the heavens, look at that, you can actually climb up. There is a firmament. And that's why Yahweh had to come down and change the languages of the people during the building of the Tower of Babylon, because they were trying to enter the heavens. So he had to come down and change the languages. So the fact that he had to change the languages because they were actually going to accomplish what they wanted means that you could actually climb up to the heavens. And if that is possible, then like I said, perhaps you can actually dig into Sheol. If they dig into Sheol, from there my hand does take them. And if they climb up to the heavens, from there I bring them down. Simple. Satan wants to climb up to the heavens, but Yahweh will bring him down. And if they hide themselves on top of Carmel, the Carmel, which means a garden or paradise, pretty much representation of paradise itself, and also can be seen as, well, it is the place where the fire came down when Eliyahu said to consume the sacrifices that represent the sacrifice of the two witnesses from fire from the heavens brought by the false prophet, Revelation 13. And if they hide themselves on top of Carmel, from there I shall search and take them. If they hide in the rocks, in the mountains, like we see in Revelation, when the sixth seal happens, they will try to hide under the rocks, but they won't be able when the day of Yahweh comes. And if they hide themselves on top of Carmel, from there I shall search and take them. And if they hide from before my eyes at the bottom of the sea, from there I shall command the serpent, and it shall bite them. That is interesting, because that is the only one that he says, I won't go in there. I'll send somebody. Right? The sea, which represents confusion, represents even darkness, right? Because the bottom of the sea is dark as can be. So it represents darkness, confusion, death. It connects regularly to Sheol, but we already saw Sheol here, so it is referring to it in a different sense. Like the nations also that are represented by the sea. So that's why the serpent goes to get them, because Yahweh is over his people, yet the serpent is over the nations. And the serpent referring both, well, to Satan, but since it is talking about the sea, it would refer to Leviathan. Leviathan, which is a representation of Samael. And if they hide from before my eyes at the bottom of the sea, from there I shall command the serpent, and it shall bite them. verse 3, right? Verse 3. The serpent, Hanachash. If they go into captivity before their enemies, from there I shall command the sword, and he shall kill them, and I shall send my eyes on them for evil and not for good. That is important to understand, not to fall as one of these people that Yahweh is referring to. And if they go into captivity, so even if they are already in a bad situation, they will be destroyed in that bad situation. My point is that one would think perhaps those who are away from the truth, that since they are already in captivity, Yahweh will leave them there and allow them to be in captivity. But no, that is too much of a blessing compared to what they deserve. They cannot just go into captivity. Captivity will just be the beginning of their punishment. And Yahweh will use that captivity to destroy his enemies. And if they go into captivity before their enemies, from there I shall command the sword, and he shall kill them. And I shall set my eyes, pretty much using the sword of others, as saying like war itself will kill them. And I shall set my eyes on them for evil and not for good. That is quite sad, because Yahweh is good. But since they are wicked, Yahweh will give them that which they want and deserve, which is evil. The sovereign Yahweh of hosts is he who touches the earth so that it melts. So you see that it is referring to the end times, which will happen as a consuming fire that will go through this earth, consuming everything in its path. And Yahweh and the sovereign Yahweh of hosts is he who touches the earth so that it melts. And all who dwell in it mourn. And all of it come up like the river and subside like the river of Mizraim. Once again, the Nile River, once again, the coming up and the subsiding, as in the coming of the last and the leaving of the last. He comes and the river grows. He's killed, resurrects and leaves, and the water subsides. So you see how once again it is connecting the destruction that is coming to the way the Nile River acts, the way the Nile River behaves. And the Nile River has a connection to Joseph, as I already mentioned, and that last is a descendant of Joseph. So this is referring to the fact that they will kill him, and then the worst will come. And the sovereign Yahweh of hosts is he who touches the earth so that it melts, like the last, who is the consuming fire. Yahweh said that the end would be like the days of Noah, but in this time will be with fire, like the days of Lot. So like the days of Noah, in the sense that it will be worldwide, the destruction. But like the days of Lot, in the sense that it will be through fire. Because in the time of Noah, it was water worldwide. In the time of Lot, it was fire locally. So now it will be worldwide with fire. So that's why the end is like the times of Noah and the times of Lot. So now he's mentioning that it melts like Lot. And then he's mentioning water like Noah. Who is, let me see, let me go. And the sovereign Yahweh of hosts is he who touches the earth so that it melts, and all who dwell in it mourn, and all of it come up like the river and subside like the river of Mizraim. Who is building his upper room in the heavens? Who is building his upper room in the heavens? Every time I hear the word upper room, I remember the movie by Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence. I don't know if you've seen Life. It's not even that funny, even though I think they are funny, but that movie isn't that funny. But they used to sing a song about the upper room. Like you have to see it and then you understand what I'm saying about the upper room. But anyways, who is building his upper room in the heavens? Remember, Mashiach said before he left, he said that he went to prepare a place for us. the prepared place. Remember that the chosen few will be taken to a prepared place for 1,260 days, for 3.5 years, during the time that the last 7 plagues will happen in this world, which will be the worst. So interestingly enough, he's talking about the worst already. Then he makes a break, remembering or reminding us all about the river that already mentioned in the previous chapter. So between that verse about the river and this verse, Yahweh already told us what will happen in the last 3.5 years. And now, after that kind of parentheses, he mentions the room that he has been building for us. Who is building his upper room in the heavens? Yahushua said, I go to prepare a place. Revelation 12, and the bride will be given eagle wings to fly, right? And we'll meet the sovereign in the clouds. And then in Revelation 15, we will be singing the song of Moshe and the Lamb over the firmament. And then we will become inhabitants of the heavens. And when we become inhabitants of the heavens is when Revelation 12 says, woe to those who inhabit the earth and the sea, because everyone will be destroyed, like we just saw in this first verse. No one of them fleeing gets away, and not one fugitive of them escapes. So, who is building his upper room in the heavens and has founded his firmament on the earth? We will sing over the firmament after we are taken to his upper room. Who is calling for the waters of the sea? Who is calling for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the face of the earth? Yahweh is his name. How important. Yahweh is his name. We must remember it. So by the fact that he says this right here shows that he's pretty much ending a thought, right? Like I was saying, from the first verse that he mentioned, the river of Mizraim, to this verse, he was telling us everything that will happen once the last comes and goes. Then it mentions where Yahweh will take his few chosen to the upper room when they will sing over the firmament. Yahweh is the one who makes the water come from the sea and water the earth. It is Yahweh who called us from the nations to give the water of life to those who are thirsty, so that the world gives fruit for the harvest. Who is calling for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the face of the earth? Yahweh is his name. Are you not like the people of Cush to me, O children of Israel? Cush means black. So just that, if we take it in the literal sense, that would mean that Israel became black. Not all of it, but a lot of true Israelites are black. And that is also said in the Song of Songs, like of Shlomo, where the bride says that she became black. Like the people of Cush. Like I said, Cush means black. But also they were beautiful, their skin was beautiful. But in the negative sense, they were descendants of Ham, who became not Ham, his son Canaan became a slave. Several of the children of Ham became slaves. Ham was the wicked one of the 3 sons of Noah. So from Ham came the worst of the nations. From Yafet, some other ones of the worst ones also, but we could even say from Shem came Edom. So yeah, still bad. But from those 3, Ham was the worst, Shem was the best, Yafet was in the middle. So like I always say, Ham represents the nations, Yafet represents the many, Shem represents the few. That's why Shem means name, because the few are the ones who keep his name set apart. And that you can see right here. Yahweh Shemo. Yahweh Shemo. Are you not like the people of Cush to me, O children of Israel? Declares Yahweh. Did I not bring up Israel from the land of Mizraim, and the Philistines from Kaftor, and Aram from Kir? So this is interesting, because Yahweh is showing that at the end he sees all people of all nations the same. The only difference is their deeds, their faith, but the faith without works is dead. So the deeds are the ones that count. If they love their neighbor as themselves, and obviously if they accepted Mashiach, Yahushua. So look how it says, did I not bring up Israel from the land of Mizraim? Right? That is the Exodus. But then he says, and the Philistines from Kaftor. So Yahweh did not only save Israel, he also saved the Philistines from Kaftor and Aram from Kir. These are three that he's mentioning, which is interesting because history separates in three: 2,000 years, 2,000 years, and 2,000 years. Death reigned during the first. Then came the law and the prophets. And then came the truth and the favor. The true and the favor. Here, Israel from the land of Mizraim, he who will rule as the mighty one from the land of two limits, or he who would rule as the mighty one, or we could also say, this is interesting, he who contends with Elohim in the land of two ends, beginning and end. So this reality, this world, the lowest reality. And Samael in the beginning contended with the mighty one, and that's why he was sent to a world of chaos and disorder. Then he says the immigrants from the head. You see Kaftor here, we already saw that word as the actual word of the column head, right? We just saw that. Let me just make sure that it is written the same way. Kaftor, that is verse 7. Kaftor, yeah, Kaftor. So the head of the column that was to be struck, strike the column head, strike the Kaftor. And now saying here, the Philistines from Kaftor, the immigrants, as we are immigrants in this reality, for we are ambassadors from the heavens, the kingdom of heaven. And like I was saying, if we see it in order, this would be the law and the prophets. We were in Egypt as immigrants, just like we are in this reality as immigrants. Philistines means immigrants. And the Philistines from Kaftor, the column head. We were immigrants in Egypt. Yahweh took us from there for us to become head and not tail. Pillar in this reality. And then the exalted one from the city, thinking kid, or the wall. Let me just make sure. Yeah, I think it's wall. And the exalted one from kid. Yahushua is the truth and the favor, and he is exalted, of course. So he came as the exalted one from the wall. The exalted one that came to protect, to surround us with a wall of protection through his Ruach HaKodesh. And obviously, since it is mentioned in two places, in each of the three times, we can say that there are 6 names here: Israel, Mizraim, Philistines, Kaftor, Aram, and Kir. So they can be connected to the 6 millenniums of this reality, the 6 days of creation, and the 3 sets of law that would rule over this earth: death, law and the prophets, truth and favor, that came from the exalted one who brought a wall. We could also say that brought down the wall, because he brought down the wall of separation that separated the nations from the Yahudim. So just like he brought us up from Mizraim, he brought the Philistines from Kaftor and the Aramim from Kir. So we see his goodness and how he works even for other nations. Yet the nations gave worship to others, the Philistines to Dagon and others. Just like Aram, they would worship a different mighty one. Yet Yahweh is the one telling us here, but I was the one who saves them. Even though they worship or give credit to a different one that is not a true mighty one, it was Yahweh who saved them, who brought them up. Look, the eyes of the sovereign Yahweh are on the sinful reign, and I shall destroy it from the face of the earth, except that I do not completely destroy the house of Jacob, declares Yahweh. Praise be his name. And he uses Jacob because Jacob in general represents the many. So that's why I say, I do not completely destroy the many, for many are called, but few are chosen. So the few who are chosen are the ones who won't be destroyed. But not only that, Jacob means supplanter, because not only Yahweh will take people from other nations who will supplant those who may have been of Jacob but rejected Mashiach, but also because we will be the ones to supplant the enemy and the wicked ones of this reality. We will take their places on thrones and mansions and everything that has to do with power that they hold at the moment. Yahweh will give it to us, so we will take that place, like Jacob means to supplant. I shall destroy from the face of the earth, except that I do not completely destroy the house of Jacob, declares Yahweh. And also, the eyes of the sovereign Yahweh are on the sinful reign, meaning this reality, meaning the new world order, the government of the. For look, I am commanding, and I shall sift the house of Israel among all the nations, or shake. For look, I am commanding, and I shall shake the house of Israel among all the nations, as one shakes with a sieve, yet not a grain falls to the ground, right? Like when you go like this to make the grain, actually to make everything else but the grain go through, right? So remember that the chosen few are the wheat, the grains. The many are the grapes. So here just mentioned, I do not completely destroy the house of Jacob, uses Jacob. So he's saying, I won't destroy all the many, because many are called, but few are chosen. The few are referred to as Israel. So that's why now he mentions Israel. And then it mentions the grain, because they are the grain of wheat. So Yahweh will not let one of them fall to the ground. Each and every one of the 144,000 will be saved without experiencing death during the harvest, when he will shake the nations, but Israel won't fall to the ground. For look, I am commanding, and I shall sift the house of Israel among all the nations, as one sifts with a sieve, yet not a grain falls to the ground. Among all the nations, so Israel is not in Israel. Israel is among the nations, is the people, not the land. We make the nation. And that place without us in it is not Israel. It's just a place that Yahweh needs to purify for it to become the land that it actually should be. So I shall sift the house of Israel among all the nations. So they are among the nations. That's why he has to sift them, right? Or shake them, so that the actual nations go down, go through, but the chosen few remain. So Yahweh is doing that throughout the nations, not in Israel. among all the nations. This is very important to understand it. And I know I say it a lot, but that is mainly for all who will listen to this in the future, because there is a lot of people who believe that they are in Israel, in geographical Israel. For look, I am commanding, and I shall sift the house of Israel among all the nations as one sifts with a sieve, yet not a grain falls to the ground. And all the sinners of my people are going to die by the sword. All the sinners, Yahushua forgives our sins, thankfully. But if one doesn't have Yahushua, he's still a sinner. So all the sinners of my people, and I say that also because even people who claim to believe in him, they still claim to be sinners. And that is sad. It is like when people excuse their wickedness or their errors by saying nobody's perfect. When nobody's talking about everybody, we're talking about you. Why do you put everybody in the plate, right? Like saying nobody's perfect is like saying because of others, I shouldn't be blamed. Because of others, the fact that they do wrong, I shouldn't be the one here paying, right? So it is just an excuse. Yahweh tells us to be perfect. We just read it in Yashar. Abraham was a perfect man. So we must be like our father, Abraham. That's simple. And if we have Yahushua, we got our sins forgiven. So we are no longer sinners because we are not slaves to sin. And we shouldn't sin, even if we still have the possibility, which is what they claim to mean when they say that they are still sinners. But to claim to be a sinner, you're using the words of your mouth which have the power of death and life. So to claim to be a sinner, it is pretty much to call on yourself sin, right? The opportunity to do it again. And it's kind of like an excuse beforehand. Just in case I sin in the future, let me tell you, I'm still late. That's how they say it. But we should be careful. I don't think it is my belief. We shouldn't say that, even if there's still a possibility for sin. And still we need to do better and get better and become stronger and all of that. But we are not sinners. In Mashiach, we are not sinners. In Mashiach, we are perfect because we can do all things through Mashiach who strengthens us. So that's why all the sinners of my people are going to die by the sword. Those who are saying evil does not overtake us nor meet us because they're waiting a rapture, or others because they have too much money, or because they have a bunker or whatever, trusting in the creation instead of the creator, trusting in their deeds instead of Yahweh's power and what he did through Mashiach. So they say evil does not overtake us nor meet us, but all the sinners of my people are going to die. There are people who claim to be sinners who still sin because they believe that once you're saved, you are always saved, because they believe that it's only they are saved by grace, as they say. So they think that the grace that they worship is all that they need, not understanding that faith without works is dead, and that's it. So a lot of people claim to be sinners, yet claim to believe in Jesus, so they believe that evil will not overtake them. But Yahweh is saying those who sin will have to die. Mainly those who are claiming that evil won't overtake them. Now, obviously, and I have to say this for the unbelievers who may come through the studies, obviously we're talking about Yahweh will protect us, so evil won't overtake us, thankfully. But that is based on the fact that we study scriptures to see what we must believe in, what we must do, and we do it. And that is why in other verses, like we just read in Revelation 3, Yahweh promises promises us that he will take care of us. Because you have guarded my word of endurance, and I shall guard you from the hour of trial, which shall come upon all the world to try those who dwell on the earth. He shall guard us. But many, sadly, in the false doctrine, come and read this and they say, yeah, this is regarding us. But they only read this because they only like to read the good parts. And not realize that, sadly, because of the teaching that they follow, the pastor that they worship or whatever, they are going to end up like this. In that day, I shall raise up. This is wonderful because this is the confirmation of what I was just mentioning. That's it usually happens. In that day, I shall raise up the booth of David. Verse 11. Bayom Hahu, in that day, Akim, I will raise up. Akim from the verb kum, which is a verb that in the book Kolator, referring to the coming of the last, whom they called Messiah ben Yosef, they speak about how the word kum, every time that it appears in scriptures, which is a verb to raise up, to get up, the verb kum, because of a prophecy in Genesis, has to do with the coming of the last, the descendant of Yosef. So he would see it. Akim et Sukkot, the booth of David, the king David. So here we have with both Yud and Vav. So that makes the name 4 plus 6, that's 10, plus 10, that's 20, plus 4, that's 24. The 24 elders that surround the throne of Yahushua, the throne of Yahushua being David himself, and David himself being referring to the last. And I know that may be confusing, but in Judaism, they teach that the last will be a reincarnation of David. In Yirmiyahu, we see the book Yirmiyahu, right? We see that Yahweh will raise up David again. And he says that it is David himself. He doesn't say somebody like David or anything like that. So that's why Judaism, they say that it is the reincarnation and that there is a possibility. But in general, the last is represented by David, even though he comes from Joseph. Just like Yahushua, in certain way, is represented by Joseph, even though he came from David. And in a certain way, because Joseph was the one sold by Yehudah as a slave, just like Yahushua was sold by Yehudah as a slave for 30 pieces of silver. And not only that, the scripture mentions no sin from Joseph, just like Yahushua never sinned. Yet it does mention a sin committed by David, just like the last does commit sin. But Yahweh says that David was a man without sin, because the last will be forgiven through Yahushua, who paid for his sin. So David is the ancestor of Yahushua HaMashiach in the flesh. And it is a representation or even the soul of the last. So right here it mentioned Akim, referring to Joseph. And now it mentions that he will raise up the Sukkot of David, which refers to his kingdom, his throne, that Yahweh promised to him for eternity. Yahweh will set it up at the end of time, as he is about to do. Also interesting that he says Sukkot, because that will happen during the Feast of Sukkot. At the very end of Sukkot, the harvest. And once the harvest happens, the body of Mashiach will be ready, and therefore the wedding of the Lamb will happen. That day I shall raise up the booth of David. Remember, I was coming and going here on the chapter of Revelation. You see how it said, he who is set apart, he who is true, he who has the key of David. So you see how when it is talking about positive things in Amos, it is referring to the congregation of Philadelphia, the chosen few, Revelation 3 from verse 7. In that day I shall raise up the booth of David, that is the kingdom, that is the last, the throne, which has fallen down. Just like they well, they stopped the kingdom. We could say even right after Shlomo, it was something else. It was different. But mainly when they killed Mashiach, Yahushua from Yehuda. In that day I shall raise up the booth of David, which has fallen down, just like the last, who is David, has fallen down in the sense of a prodigal son, fallen in the sense of doctrine. And I shall repair its breaches and raise up its ruins. So he himself will repair and raise up first and last. And I shall build it as in the days of old. So we will get to see, well, the same and even more eventually after the millennium, because this is talking about the millennium, when Yahweh will once again set up his people in his land, in the new, well, in Jerusalem, still not the new Jerusalem, but in Jerusalem, to bring the kingdom as it was in the days of David, so that they possess the remnant of Edom. So whatever is left of Rome, whatever is left of the false Yahudim, they will be our possession, meaning they will be our slaves. Now, I know it sounds harsh, but it is the truth. And obviously, we won't be as the slave masters of this reality. We will teach them how Yahweh is through mercy and love and other things. But we will possess the people of Edom that are left. And remember that Edom was converted to Judaism, and most of them are the ones who nowadays claim to be the Jewish people. Now, going back here, remember what he said. See, I am giving up those of the congregation of Satan, the Edomites, who say that they are Yahudim and are not, but lie. See, I am making them come and worship before your feet. Worship. They will have to worship Yahweh through us. And to know that I have loved you. Because we will possess the remnant of Edom. And all the nations on whom my name is called. Because we remember that Yahweh told us that every place that our foot touches will be given to us as an inheritance. Everything that we step on will be ours. So that's why he allowed the captivity to happen in the exile, for us to go throughout all the world, because he will take us from all nations. We just saw it. So that means we've been in all nations. So if we've been in all nations, his name has been called on all nations. So every nation will have to worship him, and every nation will belong to us because we went through all of them. And all the nations of whom my name is called, on whom my name is called, declares Yahweh, who does this. Look, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, that the plowman shall overtake the reaper. This is amazing. That is when time will shorten. That is also when the first and the last will become one. The plowman shall overtake the reaper. The last comes to reap the fruits of the effort made by the plowman. The last comes to harvest that which Mashiach put in the earth, which was himself as the seed. That's why he became the root, and now the branch that gets the fruits, he being the reaper, he who will harvest. John 4:37. This verse is important, even though it seems simple and too logical for some maybe, but I think is very important to understand it, or very deep actually, when you see it from the point of view of the scriptures. Verse 37, Yahushua says, for in this the word is true. One sows and another reaps. One sows and another reaps. So Yahushua was saying, I am the first, another one is the last. I came to sow, another one comes to reap. First and last, two different ones. You put the new wine in the new wine scheme and the old in the old wine scheme, right? So one sows, another reaps. So he says here, the plowman shall overtake the reaper, because time will be short. The first will become one with the last. The work that the first did will finally manifest in this reality through what the last will do. And the trader of grapes, him who sows seed. The trader, my bad, and the trader of grapes, right? The one who goes into the wine press of the wrath. And remember, that is once again the last. And I know that it seemed like a broken record, but it is what it is. Isaiah 63. In Isaiah 63, it says, woe, no, I wrote, that's not the wrong one. Second 63. Who is this coming from Edom with garments glowing colors from Bosra? Who is robed in his splendor, striding forward in the greatness of his strength? It is I who speak in righteousness, mighty to save. So that is Yahweh coming from Edom. The prophet doesn't understand, so he asks, who is this? So the prophet cannot recognize. So if the prophet cannot recognize Yahweh because he comes as an Edomite or as a Gentile, which is to make reference, well, to several things. One of them, Jacob, who got dressed as Edom to take the blessing from Yitzhak, his father. So the last comes as a Gentile to take the blessing of this reality, the inheritance, from the mighty one that is blind, who has to do with matter. Just like Yitzhak was blind when he gave the blessing to Jacob dressed as Edom. So Yahweh will come in like matter, as in the sense of as a Gentile from the nations, being himself Yahweh. Why is there red on your raiment, asks the prophet, and your garments like one who treads in the winepress? I have trodden the winepress alone, and from the peoples no one was with me. And I trod them down in my displeasure, and I trampled them in my wrath. Their blood, you see, because he comes with displeasure, because last time he came to bring mercy, this time he comes to bring punishment. That's why he shall trample them in his wrath. Their blood is sprinkled upon my garments, and I have defiled all my raiment. For a day of vengeance is in my heart. Yahushua came to bring forgiveness. The last comes to bring vengeance. The first, Yahushua, is the brain. The last is the heart. And the year of my redeemed has come. The year of the redemption. The year of the last Jubilee, the Jubilee 120, and other things. So we see that the last is the one who will tread them down, trample them, trodden the winepress alone. He comes like one who treads in the winepress. If we go to Revelation 14, which is the time of the harvest, starting from the verse 14, but that is the wheat of the few, so I'll go a little bit more. 18, and another messenger came out from the slaughter place, having authority over the fire. Remember what we just read in Amos. Yahweh was standing over the slaughter place, right? We just saw it in Amos at the very beginning. And another messenger came out from the slaughter place, having authority over the fire, and he cried with a loud cry to him having the sharp sickle, saying, so meaning he who reaps, send your sharp sickle and gather the cluster of the vine of the earth, So the grapes, like Amos just said, because her grapes are ripe. And the messenger thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of Elohim, mentioned in Isaiah 63. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress. Now, that doesn't mean that the last will actually be stepping on the many to make them give their blood. No, that means that the work of the last will make the many be captured after his death and resurrection, for them not accepting the mark of the beast, so they will be killed. And that will be the wrath of Yahweh manifesting. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the bridles of the horses for about 1,600 stadia. So imagine how much blood. I already mentioned this, so it's another confirmation. And if we go to Revelation 19, which I also mentioned tonight, so I will mention the verse since I'm already here. 13. And having been dressed in a robe dipped in blood. Once again, what blood? That of the, well, the enemies, but also the many of the winepress. And his name is called the Word of Yahweh. So his name, the name of the Messiah, is the Word of Yahweh, not the scriptures, his name. And obviously, the scriptures were inspired by him, for he is the Word of Yahweh. That's why it doesn't matter what word we look at in Hebrew, they all speak of Messiah and the coming of he who would die for our sins. But if we continue, then it says, and out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, right? For he said that he will kill all of them with his sword out of his mouth, that with it he should smite the nations. And he shall shepherd them with a rod of iron, and iron is Rome, so Edom. He comes as a Roman, as a Gentile, as the good shepherd. And he treads the winepress of the fierceness of the fierceness and wrath of El Shaddai. And he treads the winepress. So this is at the very end, after the last 7 years, when the war of Armageddon is happening, right after the wedding of the Lamb. So going back to Amos, look, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, that the plowman shall overtake the reaper, and the treader of grapes him who sows seed. The same in another way, confirming it, right? The first and last, the last and first. First referring to the few, the last referring to the many. And meaning these two, the plowman shall overtake the reaper for the few, and the treader of grapes him who sows seed of the many. And the mountains, that means the nations, the kingdoms, actually the kingdoms, and also the mighty ones. And the mountains shall drip new wine, and all the hills melt. The nations will melt. Those are the hills. Remember how mountains represent the patriarchs, the hills represent the matriarchs. Mountains represent, therefore, male, hills, female, mountains, kingdoms, hills, nations. So all the nations shall melt when they reject Mashiach in the last, therefore Yahweh. But also when you melt something, it becomes mixed. So that is like saying there will only be one people, as it was supposed to be in the beginning, right? Like a melting pot. So we will become one finally. All the hills melt, which is actually also talking about how there will be volcanoes erupting during that time. Mountains shall drip new wine. The new wine in the new wineskin, the new manifestation with the true doctrine to give joy to the kingdoms of the earth and to those who are mighty in the earth. There will be a new life. a new blood in that millennium. It will be completely different than now. I shall turn back the captivity of my people, Israel. The second Exodus. Well, by this time, the second Exodus had already happened, but this will be the millennium when Yahweh already establishes us. So that's why I turn back the captivity. He will take us back to the land, finally, to stay there for a millennium. And I shall turn back the captivity of my people Israel, and they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them. Like I said, the millennium, Yahweh will allow us to rebuild the whole world. And they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them. And they shall plant vineyards and drink wine from them. That means they will rejoice. They will own the land which they will inhabit, and they will enjoy the fruit of their work. Remember Noah, what is the first thing that he did after the flood? He planted a vineyard and drank from it. Too much, but he drank from it. So also after Sodom and Gomorrah, what did Lot do? He drank wine. Too much as well, but he drank wine. And that to show that after what is coming to the world, we will rejoice drinking wine together after the destruction to build a new world. And they shall plant vineyards and drink wine from them, and shall make gardens and eat their fruit. Wonderful. The gardens and eat their fruit. This is important because Eden was a garden, and there was a fruit that we couldn't eat, and we did eat. But now we will make gardens, we will make paradises, and we will be allowed to eat all the fruit because we already ate the one that we shouldn't, which was to enter in this one, in this reality. But now Yahweh rectified that sin through Mashiach. And by the rectification of our knowledge, we are allowed to receive eternal life. And therefore, with knowledge and life, we can eat the fruit of the rest of the trees. And I shall plant them on their own soil, right? Talking about the chosen as if they were plants, for they are trees, in fact, who give fruit of their lips, which are to confess the name of Yahweh and his son, right? That we must give sacrifice of praise. That is the fruit of our lips that confess his name. And I shall plant them on their own soil, meaning Israel, and not uproot them anymore. Look at that promise. Yahweh does not lie. So after this happens, we won't be exiled ever again. We won't be kicked out of the land ever again. That means also that we won't make Yahweh angry ever again, which is even better than the first two. He will be happy with us, so that means we will be perfect. And that means we will be perfectly happy. So I shall plant them on their own soil and not uproot them anymore from their own soil I have given them, said Yahweh your Elohim. Now, also the fact that it says, I won't uproot them, as we know, Yahushua is the root. So it is like saying, I won't take the Messiah from you ever again. Mashiach won't leave you ever again. He won't disappear. The truth will remain. And not uproot them anymore from their own soil, so we won't be exiled, said Yahweh your Elohim. And that's how the chapter ends, and the book.